I thought it might be fun to do something uplifting. Cheer people up a bit. Tell them how we are going to win. Yes, we've got a couple of blackpilling segments, but no, things are going to get better, and I'm going to prove it in this next segment. Before I do that, I just want to point out that we have a couple of jobs open at the moment. We are looking for technical people who know about the cameras and the buttons and the screens and the images and the things. So if you know about those things, go to our careers page and you'll find a bunch of jobs. We've got jobs in London and we've got jobs in Swindon and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so anyway, I've got a game, and the game is we're going to talk through quickly 12 things that are a bit bad, but I think could possibly get better, and then we're all going to score them on whether things are going to get better or worse, and then we'll come up with a score at the end. I've got a little tracker spreadsheet thing. And it will tell us where we are. So, the first thing, and when I was prepping this, I said to Bo, "What's the worst thing in the world?" And you immediately said rewriting of history.
Right.
So, what were you thinking there? What's your thought?
Well, gosh, I mean, just everything from sort of quote unquote revisionist historians,
right,
through to the capture of like the English heritage or National Trust,
right,
all sorts of things, all sorts of even film and TV drama.
Right,
which
we've actually got an example of that here. So
the blackwashing of our history for some reason.
So you're a proper historian, aren't you? You know about stuff that happened. So I'm going to show.
An undergrad in
I'm going to show you a short clip, and you're going to tell me if you can spot any inconsistencies.
All right.
So this is Anne Boleyn, apparently. Oh, got to turn there.
Egyptian king for a father.
Our boy will be a great ruler.
You doubt our daughter has what it takes.
So incongruous, isn't it? It's weird. What?
I did note in the comments to this were a lot of black women saying, "What the hell are you doing?
Right,
this is insane."
I don't want to be betrayed as a 16th century white woman. What are you doing?
You don't want to.
But also, it leaves the way for like, what if Lawrence Fox was like Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X? You can't put an actor, a white actor in a man's role of like, they would be outrage.
You got to think that St. George of Floyd is going to be getting a movie soon. What if they did Jack Black as that and Lucy Liu as Derek Chauvin or something? I mean, it just.
It's insane. And for something like, say, Bridgerton, which isn't historical in any way, then, use whatever you want. Use whoever you want it. But when it's something historical, you should because people will be watching it and they want to understand history. And then you're like, you're a young kid. Well, how was a black woman married to, Henry VIII? And
well, and why not just make Henry VIII the black woman?
Why not, right?
It's mildly inconsistent.
So it is as absurd as that. The Royal Shakespeare Society put on a Richard III a couple of years back, and Richard was played by a black woman.
Oh right, okay.
Wow.
So there you go.
So they've done that.
Yes. So what do we think on this one? Is because I think that this is going to get better because it's so absurd at this point. I can't see it getting worse. What do you guys reckon? How are we scoring this one?
I think it will have to get better. I think it will, like you said, there's, black women out there saying this is nuts. And if it happened the other way around, there would be absolute outrage.
Because that's where they've got to go next if they're going to carry this on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Malcolm X.
Like a biopic of Mensa Musa cast Ryan Gosling.
What do you?
I feel like there's not too much further it can go in its absurdity.
Right.
It might go a bit further because why not? Why not ride it to the bitter end?
Right.
But I imagine it's got to
Dylan Mulvaney. Anne Boleyn. And then it.
Yeah.
Funny you should mention.
Why have they used an actual biological female?
Yeah.
That's not really very inclusive, is it?
Yes. So we're going to go better on that. So we're off to a flying start. This is white pills everywhere. Everything is getting better. So second one I've got is the alphabet people. Now, I forgot to mention this to you before we went on air, but you've got to be a little bit careful with your terminology here because YouTube are a bit ban heavy on this one. So I just say the alphabet people because I'm thinking of, and I always get this wrong. Was it the LBTQIA plus? The alphabet people.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Don't worry. You just have to say that.
And I know that you know about this one because of this tweet.
Oh, you missed. Go on, you got to scroll up a bit, get the whole picture of the joke.
Oh, hang on. There you go. John.
There you go. You got to have the horses in.
Yes. So, what are you driving at with this one then, Liani?
Wow, it's a bit of a pantomime horse, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit. And I also wanted to point out that you haven't got the new links, John. Have you any way we can throw up are they on there anywhere?
Throw up? Did you say? I would throw up.
No. Well, on the right maybe. But I've no, where is it? Oh, we come back to that. But I was just sort of making the point that he was doing it. There we go. So that's what beauty pageant winners look like these days.
That's a disgrace.
Because you got in a bit of trouble for this one, didn't you? Because how did you describe this lovely
Matt? Yeah. I've got to be careful, haven't I? Because of your YouTube.
Oh yes.
So how do I say how? I can just say I got into a lot of trouble because this lady.
Yes.
Is called Brian.
Right,
actually called Brian. So, you know what? I'm going to say, why are these women in the background clapping? I mean, it's a disgrace. I think I would have just, I would have walked off at that point. But I'm just going to be very careful with what I say. But I did get into trouble. With talking about it. But you know.
So if you're listening rather than watching, you're going to be a bit confused. But just bear with us. There's something on the screen which is not a traditional beauty pageant.
Yeah, Brian.
We do have a traditional beauty pageant winner in the next one. John, do you want to go to that?
Why is there a sumo wrestler in a dress?
There we go.
Oh God, look at my hair then. Yeah. Oh God.
That's what beauty pageant winners used to look like.
They used to be women. Yeah.
Well, yes, there is that. So, what do you think about this? Because I tell you, the reason I'm optimistic on this one is because during COVID, when the students didn't have access to their teachers, alphabet people rates plummeted.
Right, that's interesting.
Yes. So they're clearly being sort of groomed, and I sort of think people are getting onto it now.
Oh yeah, everyone's getting sick of it, especially when it's going on in sport now. You know, I think there was just a man that won the women's is it the 200 meters or the 400 meters?
Right.
But it's just happening in sport all the time as well. I mean, beauty pageants. You see, when I won Miss Great Britain, this was in 98, so 25 years ago, 26 years ago. Like, that opened the world to me. Like, I managed to get a visa to go to America because of it. I got all sorts of endorsements, money and whatever. Those women behind Brian, whoever didn't win, lost out on a scholarship, you know? So at some point, women, if it's going to get better, I've got to say, I'm not going to participate. I'm just going to stop. And I think that's also what happened.
So I did see a story recently about, it was in the US, and it was, I think it was a shot put.
Yes.
And all the women basically walked up to the little throwing pit thing and then just walked off without throwing because they all refused. So they did exactly what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And the sports authority gave them all lifetime bans.
I think it's only the next, I think it got changed just to one ban. But
But still. I mean,
but it turns out that, you know, the teacher was one of the allies of those alphabet people. So, you know, and it's actually a darts player. It happened in a darts event a little while ago that I think it was a quarterfinalist refused to play against, you know, one of these people. So,
lady,
I'm a lady. Yeah, so, and that's the only way it's going to stop, I think, unless everyone just goes out and starts placing bets on.
Well, unless we just, I mean, I suppose we might need them if on your segment, if all the women have to wear the letterbox thing, we will need the new ladies just to make up the rackets.
Of all things, shot put or swimming, of all the things, it's so not fair. Like, it's really. Like, of course, the dude is going to dominate that.
Shot putting.
Yeah. Of all things, like upper body and shoulders and stuff. It's just...
Because
I've
I've not seen one of these alphabet people win a female ballet competition yet.
Right, yeah. Something that requires grace and delicacy. You get some big 6-foot dude with his Adam's apple. So I think, hopefully this, a bit like the last thing we said about the blackwashing in TV and films.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem to me too much further it can go, because we've almost reached sort of the zenith of absurdity.
You got alphabet admirals and generals in the US now.
Yeah, what else? Where else is there to go with it? And I also think that actual, not just homosexual people, but actual true transgender people or true intersex people, there's such a tiny, tiny number of people in society. Tiny, tiny number of people. So if it's something like casting black people in white roles, well, you could see how there's a massive demographic of people that would want to see that, perhaps. But when it comes to sort of intergender, transgender, intersex stuff, it's actually a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people, right?
Yeah.
And hardly anyone wants to see their kids sexualized from a young age, like almost sort of forced to go to sort of drag shows or whatever. Yeah. I think the kickback on that will be bigger and quicker.
Right.
I hope. I think.
You're optimistic.
And I think it's already sort of begun as well. I think.
Yeah.
What about you? Are you optimistic on this one?
I'm optimistic. I think, when we first mentioned it like years ago, people were like, oh, it's such a minority. And as it's taken over a bit more and you keep reading weekly about some dude winning a women's race.
Yes.
People are getting sick of it. And that's it. They're getting absolutely sick of it. The dads are out. Everyone's getting sick of it. And I'm optimistic.
We are full optimism so far. My next one, I haven't got any links for this, but lockdowns. Do you think that could ever happen again?
I didn't comply with any of the original lockdowns. So I would like to be hopeful, but I don't know, because I think people got so brainwashed. I'm really torn on that one. I think people could be fooled again, because I've seen what they're like. I think they could be fooled again. I personally will not ever comply.
And I'd like to think more people have come our way on this, but I'm not sure. I'm a bit iffy on this one because, I speak to some normie relatives and I say, well, it was obviously a nonsense. Do you see now what I was saying the whole time? It was obviously a nonsense. And they say, oh, I think it was justified at the time. So what do you think? If they did it again, do you think it would work?
Well, I think in general, a lot of people, a lot of quote unquote normies will be a bit more savvy than they were the first time.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will play out in exactly the same way. Yeah. But the general concept of sort of martial law or just curfews, it will happen again at some point in our future, because that's what history suggests. At some point there'll be an emergency. The government will tell you there's an existential threat, not necessarily from a pandemic or from a disease. It could be from all sorts of things. There is now martial law in place. That will happen again in our future.
Right. So you're going to go on the negative.
I think I'm going to have to go on the negative, because if it might not be a pandemic, it could be something else. Maybe, the climate, you can't go within, you can't drive a mile away from your house.
One of the things governments sort of insist on as sort of the bottom line of their authority is force.
Yes.
And the soft version of that is the police, but ultimately it's the army.
Yeah.
I suspect in our lifetimes, in America, there will be martial law in various places at various times.
There almost is on the campuses at the moment, isn't there? They're talking about bringing in the National Guard for these protests.
Well, during the LA riots in 92 or 93 or whatever, there was martial law in LA. They brought in the army to stop the rioting. We had a summer, was it 2 summers ago now? The summer of George Floyd.
Yeah.
Something like that will happen again.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So we've had our first negative one. Okay, what about vax mandates? That's my next one.
I mean, I'm torn on that one as well. I mean, they're really throwing bird flu around at the moment, aren't they?
They are definitely really pushing something there.
And again, that'll probably be a hill I die on. I'll be struggling until the bitter end, but it's. Look, I'm really happy at the way Britain really pushed back against that, because there was a lot of pushback, more so than we saw in like New Zealand, Canada.
I was kind of encouraged also by Austria, if you remember that one, because they made it a legal requirement and they walked it up to the day before that they were going to go out and have to arrest people for not having their vax, and it was something like 4, 5, maybe 6 million Austrians that they were going to have to arrest. And like however many millions of people it was, they just held the line and said, no, we're not doing this. And the government had to back down, because the only way they could have done it is by hastily erecting concentration camps, massive ones, to put millions of people in. So people did hold the line on it, and I'm also encouraged because the vax uptake for children is minuscule. It's like less than a percentage point or something. So at some level, people know, even if they got it themselves. I think they know. And
lawsuits are going to help. If, the lawsuits for all those people in like the USA that got fired from their jobs.
Yeah, so you're starting to see it now. What do you think? Do you think optimistic or pessimistic on this one?
I don't know. Like I said, like you, Lani, I didn't take it and never will. And it is a hill I'm prepared to die on, like actually, physically. Yeah. No, you'll have to send 2 or 3 blokes round my house and strap me into a gurney before I let that filth go in my body. It's as simple as that. No, it's not happening. They pushed it quite to the limit here, because I remember it was over one Christmas. They were going to say, because in France you couldn't get on a train unless you showed your vaccine passport, and they were going to do that here. And I started to actually make plans of, okay, I'm never going to go on a train again. I remember them pushing it right up to the limit, and then they said, oh, actually, it was just before they brought the restrictions down a bit. So whether they try that again, I fear they will, because the whoever it is that really controls a lot of policy in the West, at least, whether it's the WHO or whether it's the Klaus Schwab controlled cabinets that kowtow to
I think they overplayed their hand.
Whatever it is, I wouldn't put it past them to try again. Whether people will put up with it is another question.
You got pushback now, so we got the Telegraph running stories like this about people.
I think people are less naive now. Yeah, hopefully, I think that. Yeah.
But this guy was fit and healthy before his vax, and it nearly killed him. And this kind of thing is now making its way onto mainstream media. So I think they overplayed their hand. I don't think they're going to get away with it again. But I mean, I'll take your votes. Where do you...
There's just one other thing to say. There's obviously so many examples of this.
Yes,
and got to give shout out to Andrew Bridgen MP. For having the testicular fortitude to talk about it and refuse to stop talking about it.
Yeah,
I've got to give him big credit for that.
So where do you come down on this one then? Optimistic or pessimistic?
Unfortunately, pessimistic, I think.
Yanni,
I'm really on the fence.
You're the deciding vote on this one.
Do you know what? I'm gonna put the good vibes out there. I'm gonna be positive. Just to put the good vibes out.
Excellent. Right. Next one. Do we think that this will ever be recognised for what it was? So for those listening, I'm showing that what was it? That Time article about how we fortified the election. The secret history. They actually even say a cabal was put together in order to sort of get the right outcome. But it's not kind of official. For a long time, we were banned on YouTube for even talking about this.
Banned?
Well, we weren't banned, but we would have been banned if we.
Yeah. I didn't realise this is one of the things they were banning.
Yeah. So they've decided we can talk about it now, but but the official story is, of course, that Joe Biden is the most popular president of all time. In fact, it looks like the only reason Obama won is because he had Joe Biden as his VP.
Right. Yeah.
I think this will come out and it will just be one of those accepted historical facts. Like, we rigged that one.
I think eventually one day it will come out. I mean, maybe when we're all dead, or but it would, like you said, it would just be accepted as, oh well, that's what it is. Politics has always been a bit corrupt. But
we have got the next one coming up soon, where they're sort of going to the ends of the earth to make sure that even recent arrivals across the border can vote without ID.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's past them at the moment. So this one is a tricky one. Is this going to get better or worse, do we think?
I would imagine worse. I mean, it's a story as old as time. You say almost as though it's a cliche. It's for a reason. That there has always and probably will always be a degree of electoral fraud.
Right.
I heard someone say that in 2016, when Hillary ran, they didn't cheat enough. And then when Biden ran, they cheated too much. But I'm fascinated by the 1960 election. It's where JFK beat Nixon in 1960. And it's very, very well documented, the amount of fraud that went on there. In some places, more votes were cast than there were people. The mafia were all mixed up in it, and Joe Kennedy, that's John Kennedy's father, was all mixed up in all sorts of shady shenanigans. Right. But the point is, there will almost certainly be some degree of electoral fraud. It just depends sort of how blatant it is, on what scale it is.
But you're going with pessimistic on election integrity then?
Yeah, again, the sort of the shape of history is that when republics begin to fall apart, like the United States appears to be, if you look at the example of the Athenian Republic or the Roman Republic, bribery and electoral fraud, it will be a trajectory downwards. It will become more and more venal and corrupt until it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. That is what every republic thus far in human history has happened.
So you've decided a sort of precedent of 2,000-year history that all points in the same direction. What do you think, Liani? Do you think this is going to get better, this sort of stuff?
I don't think it's going to get better. I think there's going to continue to be this election fraud, but I do think the story is going to come out, and I'm positive about that. But it's not going to matter because it's kind of, because
they don't care.
Because they don't care, and there'll be another story that turns everyone's heads or something. Even if they came out and said it absolutely 1,000,000% was fraudulent, they would never, it would be yesterday's news. Like, they don't care anymore.
So I think I'm going to have to agree on that one. I think this sort of stuff is going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, I think, and also it doesn't matter to the extent that it's a uni-party.
Yes.
And the mechanisms of government, the bureaucracy, what we might call the civil service, remains the same anyway, whether you've got Biden or the Donald. The first time, Mr. Trump claimed he was going to drain the swamp, and he gave it a go, but didn't really get very far with it, did he? He got rid of Comey, but he didn't clear out the intelligence services.
I kind of think that all he did was froth up the swamp enough that you could see the swamp creatures clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
So it kind of did its job on that.
Yeah.
But he didn't get rid of any.
No, he didn't get rid of any of them, did he?
Yes.
And it's almost an impossibility. I think for this all to come out in the wash in any time soon, like decades down the line, you'll get historians that talk about it freely. But for it to come out in the wash in the next 5 years, it would require. I would have thought the Republicans would need control of Congress, 2/3 in the Senate. They'd need a perfectly clean FBI, a perfectly clean Department of Justice. Which is just not going to happen.
But it's like Kennedy's death, isn't it? It's like, it doesn't even matter anymore. I mean,
we kind of all know, but
like, what's going to be done about it? Nothing, because everyone's dead.
Yes. Right. Next one. So that was a bummer as well. Next one is mass immigration. Is that going to get better or worse? And again, on my logic of they've taken it to such an extreme at this point,
unprecedented in all of human history. These migrations of people.
Yeah. And I think the backlash is coming. In fact, I note. Here we go. So in Ireland, they just go around now burning down these sort of asylum centres. They realise that the democratic process is just such a complete farce. Now, I'm not endorsing this, of course, but Irish chaps have been saying, we're not gonna have it. We're just going to burn them down.
Well, I think the pendulum's really kind of swinging now, and I think it could go extreme the other way, which also won't be good. But I don't see it getting better democratically. Like, I think they're just going to keep. We've spoken about Serco and all the money involved, and I think it's
too much money
much money is being made, and even with like the house building now and everything else, there's too much money involved. I just don't see it unless the British people themselves take a stand. I don't think the government's going to do anything about it. And I could be wrong, and or maybe something will happen, but it's going to get a lot worse.
Well, I mean, something could be. Are we going to halve it? We're going to take it down to 700,000 a year instead of 1.4 million, and then they say, okay, that's a big win, but it's still 700,000 a year. Well, were you optimistic on this one, Bo?
I actually agree with Lani on a couple of points there. That I think we're in the process of the pendulum swinging. I think we're living through. I hope we're living through that process, but also it will get worse before it gets better. So we're at the beginning of the pendulum. Say the pendulum's reached its momentum. It's
right, but maybe a little bit further.
And because again, if you look at the example of history, It never works for long. You can't just take massive amounts of foreign people and supplant them against the will of a native population and it work. That has never, ever happened. That has never happened. And it not end in blood and tears.
Yes.
So just that.
Right.
It cannot continue indefinitely.
Well, of course,
you can't just flood Ireland and Britain or France or Germany or the United States with foreign fifth columnists, enemies of the state, and expect it to work.
But is it going to get better?
In the end, but I believe it will get worse.
Okay, let's pick a 10-year timescale. Will it be better in 10 years? What do you reckon?
I don't know. What will England even look like in 10 years? I can't even.
Yeah, we're going to have a very loose definition of better by then, aren't we?
I think in the timeline, in the universe we're living in, 10 years is a long time. Yeah. I wouldn't like to predict. I would hope so.
Right.
I would hope that we'd be remigrating people by that point.
Right.
But whether that is true, whether that happens or not, I fear not. But on a longer timescale, in a century, let's say, I think I would have thought we'd be in a better
it might be a bit long for our purposes.
I think we might all be gone. I don't know if there's going to be any
So
are
we going to go with negative on this one then?
I don't know. I want to be positive. I really want to be positive.
Right.
I'm going to have to be a bit pessimistic, I think.
Pessimistic on this one. Don't worry. We booked some early wins, so we might be all right. So, net zero. Yeah, that's my next one. Net zero. So, sort of encouraged on that one because, of course, you've got the Blade Runners in London chopping down the cameras. You've got the farmers' protests where they have had some wins, and you've got Tony Blair saying, "Come on, chaps, you might actually want to win an election. This is being a bit silly now." This also feels to me like something that has sort of reached the top of the pendulum. So do we think this net zero stuff is going to get better or worse?
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to have to really pee some people off.
Right. Blackouts.
Before, I think it's going to have to really get under people's skin because it's such a scam. And until people start getting taxed and seeing that, these holidays they took the jabs for are going to go up by 20% because of, the net zero taxes added. Until that happens and, people's lives are made a little bit more uncomfortable, I don't think it will. But when that happens, I think people are really going to
you're right. They took the jabs so they could do the holidays. Yeah, now they're going to get a carbon tax on their flight. They won't do that.
I mean, Germany's just put it up to 20%, which is, 20%, which is... absolutely insane. Up to 20%, I think.
It will be 200% before long, won't it? It'll be like triple the price of your ticket. What about you, Bo? Do you think net zero is done at this point?
I'm more optimistic about this one than some of the others because it's just impracticable. It's not really just a case
of... that's all the government, though,
can we find a bought and paid for director that's going to cast this crazy cast? It's not that. It's not possible to do.
Yeah.
It's not possible to do. Like we had that Alex... chap on earlier, like it would involve for example destroying all global trade. Right.
Yes.
Like all shipping would have to come to an end, which would destroy society. That really would destroy civilization. You get some of these people that say we need to stop farming, for example. I rewatched a clip just the other day of some student kid saying we need to stop farming because of the CO2. Well, it's a nonsense.
What are you going to eat? What are you going to eat? Are you going to live on oxygen?
Oh, well, his answer will just be, I'll just go to the shops.
Yeah, it's just like, this is what I mean. And I think even environmentalists now, they're like, hold on a minute. You're covering our beautiful green fields in solar panels. You're chopping down millions of trees to put up wind turbines.
So that you can chop up birds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're seeing the contradiction in it all. I think it...
But overall, I kind of agree with Yanni that people are making so much money, it's going to continue to get worse before it gets better.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not sure if they are, because I think the truly wealthy, moneyed class make a lot of money the way it is. For example, Mazak Line, or some people that are involved in shipping. Let's just take the example of shipping. They're extremely powerful.
Oh, you're saying it's going to mess with other people's money?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. If you start messing with sort of energy magnates, then they're not going to. They're extremely powerful interests in society, and most people that have bought the climate change hoax are sort of they're the older generation, aren't they? Like the climate extinction people. They're they're nutters who haven't really understood reality properly. You know, someone like Greta Thunberg, that the world is going to end, or we're all going to be underwater by 2012 or something.
They're not like religious zeal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've got a good enough argument. I mean, CO2 doesn't drive climate change.
Yeah.
Sorry, it doesn't. It's plant food, if anything.
Exactly. I'm going to wear my badge. I fed 100 oak trees today.
So let's whiz through a couple more.
Right.
Next one I've got is inflation. I'm pretty solid on this one. It's going to get a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right.
I think when the dollar collapses due
Yeah.
to their $35 trillion debt,
So
inflation will get worse. Yeah.
Welfareism. So welfareism is driving the dissolution of family bonds. It's driving up welfare, atomization, all that sort of stuff. 60% of London housing is first-generation immigrants at this point. I think that we just simply can't afford it. But again, it's one of those ones where it kind of has to get worse before it gets better.
Definitely going to get worse before it gets better, I think, because I don't see a way of them stopping it until, people
there is a way to
start...
stop it, which is you have the same family models as the rest of the world, which is you have multi-generational families living together instead of welfare.
Yeah. Oh, no. I see how it can be stopped. I just don't see that our government, any of us, are going to step in and do anything. If the Conservatives won't, then wait and see what happens if and when. I'm sure Labour are going to get in. It's just going to get worse. I mean, it's going to get worse. I know. Yeah. No.
Are you optimistic, Bo?
No. Our governments are effectively socialist. You know, someone like Billy Bragg would ask to have a path built from him from cradle to grave.
Yeah.
And that gives all the power to the state.
Yeah.
And that's the way the state want it.
Because people are no longer reliant on their families and the bonds that bind them. It's all dependent on a government.
Exactly.
check.
If you're self-sufficient, then the government don't really have that control over you or that power. But as soon as you need them to live, then all your power goes to them. So I think that's a huge, massive part of it. They want people to be dependent on them.
Number 10 on the list is I put TV says. Are we still in the realm of this is the whole thing. The TV says something, and then everyone believes it.
I think the back of that is broken. I like to think the back of that is broken. I think what we're doing here right now, even GB News, I think a lot of the corporate mainstream media has lost. Fundamentally, people have lost trust in it. A lot of people, not everyone by any means, but.
So the figures that I've seen on this are quite encouraging because basically, if you're under 40, you don't watch TV, you watch online. Mm-hmm. And this has been because that trend first appeared when it was younger people, millennials living at home, because they wouldn't sit in the family room and watch the TV. They'd watch their personal screens. And then when they move into their own place, they keep their own habits.
Yes.
So people are just moving away from, whatever the TV says. So I'm quite optimistic on this one, that the back of the corporate media will be broken soon.
Absolutely. I'm really positive as well. I just don't think you just have to look at TV ratings now, don't you? Everything's like plummeted down. Newspaper, no one reads the papers anymore. It's all social media. The only worry is censorship.
Oh, that's my next one.
Oh, okay.
Censorship. Is that going to get worse or better?
That's going to get worse because people aren't looking at the TV. So the only way to control us now is to start censoring what's on social media and what us young people do watch and where we do get our news. The censorship's going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, we got a strike, didn't we? We were off air for like 5 days off YouTube recently, and they've obviously been cracking down on GB News quite heavily.
Yes.
I mean, for basically any excuse. X, interestingly, has gone the other way. So I like that.
Yeah.
But then it feels like they're going to try and find a way as soon as they can of getting rid of that, like TikTok.
Well, the governments are getting involved, aren't they, to try and censor X and TikTok and all the rest of it. They really, really don't want people. I think they're terrified, absolutely terrified of social media and other ways that people can speak. And even in person, like, during the lockdowns, you can't get together as a group. Why? Because they don't want people speaking.
And didn't Scotland... they might have reversed it now, but didn't they temporarily have a law that said you can't even... They were trying to censor it in your own home.
Yes.
When there's no one there. They wanted to turn the Alexas on to make sure that you couldn't say anything that they didn't like. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if it was the Alexa. I did wonder how they were going to enforce that, whether it would have to be somebody in your own home recording you. Otherwise, it's word someone's word against the other. But you do have all those devices like Alexa and what have you, recording everything you say. So I think it's that's a scary thing.
So that's right. The last one.
You didn't ask me about censorship.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you think
it's one of the things I've written about most extensively?
Sorry, I censored
I've got a ridiculously pessimistic view on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel we're going to end up in sort of a Maoist era, Stalinist era.
Right.
You're not allowed to think what the party doesn't want you to think.
Yeah.
They don't say it.
Yeah.
I do fear that's in our future. If you look at the internet in the old days, the early internet, it was a Wild West, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're not there anymore. And I see the trajectory going the same way. People don't watch the TV as much anymore. The internet is better than TV. Simple as that. For a myriad of different reasons.
Yeah, subscribe to lotuseaters.com.
So the uni party, the powers that be, will need to censor it.
Yes, they have to.
I fear that's...
The last one on my list before we go to the comments is the deep state. The deep state, the CIA, the feds, all that kind of stuff, that control mechanism.
The GCHQ boys, how you doing?
Yeah, hi Gary, how you doing?
I call them the acronym club, the WEF, the WHO, all of those.
Yeah. Are they on the verge of kind of exiting the stage at this point?
I don't think so. Not yet. I think they've definitely overplayed their hand. I think more people are onto it.
See them.
We can see it. We see it happening. But I've always thought, I've been into this for like the last 20 years. So, I've seen them overplay their hand, as I said, and I've seen that it's more obvious.
Right.
But I don't think we still know who the top people are pulling this. We know a lot of them, but I don't think we know all of them, and I think they will also...
We know there's something there, but we just haven't quite figured out...
Well, they're going to be more desperate now. They're like caged animals, aren't they?
They're going to have to drop a lot of the pretense and just use hard power now.
That's
rather than soft power. Well, what about you, Bo? Do you reckon...
Yeah, the real power has always laid with the deep state, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the Praetorian Guard.
The intelligence services. There's all sorts of ways you could describe it. Who are they? Like in America, whether it's not just the CIA, it's like the NSA. There's all sorts of military intelligence. It's not even necessarily the chiefs of staff at the Pentagon. Those that control, they're not going anywhere. And the Soros types with the billions that can influence everything, like, send the NGOs and all of those people like moving the Africans and the Middle Easterns
governments
to
and
Mexico.
Financial backing. They've got everything.
They've got everything. They can support it all. They can send...
I think that's the final boss of our set of problems is the deep state.
Yes.
But
it's so deeply entrenched, though, because there's this argument, isn't there, that Dr. Parvini talks about, that the populism is a delusion, that the normal people, a mob, rise up like in 1789 and take control. That's almost certainly not going to happen. We don't really live in that kind of paradigm anymore. So it'll be extremely, extremely difficult.
So we're going to have to go with a no on this one. Right. So anyway, I've got a scoring system for this uplifting segment, and the scores go from going to hell, slow grind, stay as they are, modest improvement, and what I was hoping for, which is return to reason. We scored slow grind. So it could be worse.
Could be worse, right?
Could be worse.
Second word, we're not going to hell, and things are not staying as they are even.
I have faith in the human spirit that you can't put up with so much repression and lies.
Yeah.
People won't put up with it forever. The last most essential command of the party is to disbelieve the evidence of your own eyes and ears. That has never really worked indefinitely, again, in history. That'll work up to a point, and in the end...
I think if we were doing this over like a 40-year period, I'd be more optimistic. But it's just the next few years, which is certainly...
I think it will get worse before it gets better, but will ultimately get better.
Well, as long as it doesn't get worse before it gets worse.
But we've all got to fight for it to get better.
Yes.
There
we go. That's the note of optimism I wanted. There we go. So, right.
We're all going to fight.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as Common Sense Crusade with Calvin Robinson every Thursday. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.